Welcome back to Fired Up with Foz, where we ask the questions that get people talking. Now, today we're diving into a subject that's often in the headlines, but rarely heard in human voices: asylum seekers and refugees. Forget the political spin, forget the stereotypes. This is about real people, real journeys, and the reality behind the headlines. We've got some fire starter questions lined up. No multiple choice, no easy answers. We want stories, truths, and maybe a few mic drop moments. So grab your drink, lean in, and let's talk about what it really means to seek safety. I would like to welcome my guest, Samira Hussain, who's a lead in the sector. Welcome to the studio, Samira. I can already see in your eyes you're fired up, and I guess is that to do with the news headlines, stereotyping that goes on. But before we start, tell us how you got into this line of work. Let's just start with the basics for our viewers and tell us the difference between asylum seekers and refugees.
So an asylum seeker is someone that has come into the country and has fled something like war, prosecution, and has asked the country that they've come to for safety, and they're waiting for their asylum claim to be processed. And a refugee is someone whose asylum claim has been processed and that the country that they've gone into believes that they are a valid case and they have given them refugee status to stay in the country. And then an asylum seeker wouldn't necessarily have the same rights as a UK citizen would, but if you have refugee status, then you would have the same rights as a UK citizen has.
Okay, so speaking of rights then, I guess that flows nicely into the next question, is in terms of financial support, what is their entitlement? Because we get a lot of comments, don't we, and people making that assumption, whether they're on the benefit system. How does that work?
So when they're an asylum seeker, they don't have any benefits at all. When they arrive, while their asylum claim or their Section 95 application is being processed, they don't actually get any funding at all. They get no money at all during that process of that application being processed. Right. And then once that application is processed, then they'll get something called an Aspin card. And then on that Aspin card, they'll get £9.95p a week if they are in catered full board accommodation. If they are in a self-catering accommodation, that's £49.18p a week that they receive.
Okay. That's not a lot, is it, really? What does that cover? What kind of things can they buy with that? Are there other things that they're already entitled to they might get? Or does that mean food, bills, paying stuff for the kids? What's that £49 going to cover? I mean...
So it's very, very hard. So when I initially started this role, someone that was in full board didn't get any money at all.
For how long?
Until they moved to self-catering accommodation.
Right.
And I started working within this sector probably about 6.5 years ago. So when I first came in, they didn't get anything. And then I think it was around about COVID time that the Home Office then started approving payments. So someone that was going through that period of time would literally come in the clothes on their back and wouldn't even have a hairbrush or a nail clipper. It was something really, really simple, but they wouldn't have the money in order to kind of go and buy that until they went into self-catering accommodation. Now, when they go into self-catering accommodation, that £49.18p would have to cover everything. So their utility bills are paid for, but it would be for food, for transport, if they've got to get their kids to school, if they're going to come back, if they've got medical appointments, they would have to cover that within that money, clothing, school uniform, everything that you can think of, they would have to cover within that money. And sometimes it's really difficult because I had situations.
I was going to say, me and you, we're both parents, and if you think about our spending, that's just still not enough, is it, to get by?
No, it really isn't. I know how much I shop in Aldi's, and I know how much I can just go in there. I can spend £60 on absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
So they really
that's
have
the food,
to.
isn't it? That's your groceries.
Yeah.
But there's so much more, isn't there, as well?
Yeah.
Throughout the week and month we cover with the kids.
It is. It's a shame
Yeah.
because initially, I mean, my heart used to go out, especially when I initially started, especially in the summer months when, that I knew that I was taking my kids out and I'm going to buy my kids ice cream in the park. And even if I wasn't going to buy ice cream from my ice cream man, even if I was going to go to Aldi's and buy ice cream from there and take it to the park, at least I had that option to be able to
Yeah.
buy ice cream for my kids. But they don't have that option to be able to buy ice cream for their kids.
That wouldn't even be a necessity for them, though, would it? There'd be so many other things on that priority list for them to want to buy.
Yeah, definitely.
Than think about an ice cream, I guess.
Yes, certainly. And then also as well, when their children have certain allergies, yes, okay, they're in full board accommodation, and their food is catered for. However, when you are a mom and you want to cook for your kids and you just want to, when your kids, they just want to eat their mom's food.
Yeah.
They want to eat their cultural food. They don't want to eat chicken nuggets and chips or even
processed stuff.
Yeah, or even food that they're not even culturally aware of. And a lot of kids are now malnutritioned, who are not getting the right amount of vitamins, who are not eating because of the way that the food is presented to them. So it is really, really difficult for them to kind of can't eat certain foods, who have a child that is picky with their food,
or has allergies,
has allergies, and all kids are picky. My kids, I have to constantly pick out tomatoes from certain thing, or things. So my kids are all, and most children are picky eaters, and they're like something that, I mean, I'm an adult and I'm still picky on what I eat and what I don't eat. So it is really, really difficult when you have kids and when you have come from a certain culture and your children are used to that cultural food and not being able to cook for them. It is really, really difficult. So any little bit of money that they do have, they do try to kind of save it so that they can buy their kids food, so that they can offer that comfort, I guess, for the kids as well.
Yeah. How did you kind of get into this role? Because you talked about you being in the sector for about 6 years now. Where's that passion come from? Why work with asylum seekers and refugees? It's such a controversial topic, in the news even now. But for someone who works in that sector, is so passionate, and I know the work that you do, but share that with us.
It's a backstory. There's a long story back there. I didn't actually think that I was going to go into this field, and it wasn't my aim, and it just naturally flowed into that way. So when I was in my heydays, as they say, I worked with the family business. I was working in recruitment, and I thought that I was going to go into something like embalming, because my dad's very much a businessman. So I was like, what can I do to create a business where I can always make money? And as morbid as it is, I thought, working and opening my own funeral home would be the way.
That sounds morbid, yeah. How old were you then?
I was like at college age, so yeah, very young.
So what, like 17, 18?
Yeah.
And you're thinking, I want to be a funeral director?
Yeah, I wanted to open my own funeral home. I just thought, you know what, there's not many Muslim funeral homes, and there's not many Muslim women working within that sector. And also as well, embalming is very specialized, but then also as well, there's always money within that. And I just thought that it would be a very lucrative business. And then when I was doing recruitment and working within recruitment, I was approached about a young lad who needed an operation, and they needed to fundraise some money for him. So I decided I was going to do a charity dinner. But then a job came up for international charity, and she was like, apply. I was like, no, I'm not going to apply. I'm not going to get it. I've got no experience whatsoever. Why would I apply for it? And she was like, no, apply. And until the last day, she was like, no, you're going to apply. So she forced me to apply for this job. And
she clearly saw some skills that you had. There was something about you that she thought, there's some potential there.
She must have, definitely. And she was a really good friend. So I did.
All right, so it's who you know then.
The first bit of the stepping stone to kind of start working within the charity field. And I absolutely thrived. Loved the job so much.
So tell us a little bit about some of the common challenges that asylum seekers and refugees are faced with.
There's a lot of challenges. Every single day is a challenge, and you are seeing an increase on mental health. And I think the biggest challenge is that they come to the UK, they want to give back. they want to work. They don't want to be stuck in the situation. They wish that they could start working. They wish that they could start contributing to the community.
Okay.
I think language is a massive barrier, and they don't have the right to access ESOL classes until they've been here for 6 months, which can be very, very difficult, especially when you've come into a new country and you're trying to learn the language. And those that have learnt the language and do have certain qualifications, say if someone was a doctor, they wouldn't be able to just come in and start working as a doctor. And obviously we understand that these qualifications need to be translated and that they need to do certain tests. But for example, the GMC, if you have got refugee status, you can have the test for free.
Okay.
If you don't have refugee status, then you have to pay for these tests, and if you've got no money coming in,
where would that fund come from?
Yes. So that is the good of the community. And so, I mean, I had a particular doctor that I was working with, and the voluntary sector and the community came together. They raised the money for his tests and helped pay for his tests. He's now working as a doctor in Manchester.
Oh, how amazing! Yeah,
he's saving so many lives. And if the community didn't come together, they didn't raise the money to allow him to do that test, he wouldn't be able to practice.
Well, of course, and then that would just have been a waste of a qualification and skills and experience he's probably come with into the country.
And how many people's lives that he's saving now because of it.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of barriers, and it's unfortunate that some of the barriers don't need to be there.
Give us an example. What some of the health barriers that people might face?
So there's a lot of health barriers. Actually, I was having a conversation with someone about this the other day. If they come in and they don't have their HC2 certificate, some of the hospitals or professionals won't see them at all unless they can prove that they've got money to be able to pay for that medical treatment.
Right.
And a lot of clients that I work with, once they get their Section 95, that's when they get their HC2 certificate, and that's when
that could take weeks, months, right?
Yeah, it depends on how long the application takes. And some people as well, depending on what route they're taking in terms of, so if they were a student, for example, then they wouldn't necessarily have the funds to pay for any healthcare. So they would face further barriers than the clients that I particularly are engaging with or working with. And then language is another barrier. Language can be a big, massive barrier. And probably, I don't know, about a year ago, I had a lady who was expecting. She just had arrived in the country, was here a few days. Her husband and her got split up and they were put into 2 different accommodations. And
split up as in the relationship, or as in the situation they were in?
In the situation that they were in. So they were housed in 2 different accommodations at the time, hundreds of miles apart. It could have happened for different reasons. So they could have come in at different times when they entered, different time, a different day, or a different time in the day, or they didn't have accommodation that could accommodate them both in the same place at the time.
Okay.
So there's many reasons why that could have happened. But because her husband was placed in another accommodation, she was having a miscarriage, and her husband couldn't come into the accommodation to look after her child, and she had no one to look after her child, so she could go and get the treatment that she needed in order to. So
he couldn't come into the accommodation she was living in for what, safeguarding reasons, or?
Yeah, so for if someone isn't resident at the accommodation,
they wouldn't be allowed to. Right.
They're not allowed to come into the accommodation. So there's certain rules and regulations,
which is fine. I get that, but that's your partner. I'm sure they would have proof to say that we're a couple.
Yes, but there's still a lot of red tape, unfortunately.
Yeah.
There's
So
a
that's
lot.
it's almost like coming into the country and then having a barrier above and on top of another barrier.
There's always barriers constantly, one barrier after the other. So, for example, if someone came into the country and you wouldn't have the right to work when you're an asylum seeker, and then if your claim hasn't been processed for 12 months or more, then what happens is you have the right to apply for the right to work. But then once you apply for the right to work, if the Home Office grants you the right to work, you can only work on the UK jobs shortage skills list. So you couldn't come in and then say,
And
okay,
say, well, I'll go and get this job or something you might have qualified in back at home and pursue that career or field.
yeah,
You wouldn't.
no,
It has to be on the job
it
list.
has to be on the job shortage
Government job
list.
list.
Yeah, you have to be within that field. And then even though you have the right to work, it doesn't mean you have the right to rent. So even if you're working, you can't then just go and rent a property and live in there,
Well,
even though
why
you're
not?
earning
Because
enough money.
surely you would have ID, you've got an income.
You would then have to apply for the right to work.
Right. Okay.
Sorry, the right to rent.
Okay.
So then there's another
That's
barrier.
another set of rules and barriers to have to overcome to find a place to stay.
Yeah, definitely. And even just the right to work application. It used to be very simple. It was a simple email, but now it's a quite a heavy document that they have to fill in. And if English is a barrier, or even when English isn't a barrier and they do understand it, it can still be quite complex. And the voluntary sector is so overstretched, and the volunteers are so overstretched that they don't have the time and capacity to help them and support them to fill in these applications.
Okay. So that quite easily, that individual or groups of people would actually miss out on services because you're saying what? Even with volunteers, you don't have the capacity, they don't have the time, we don't have enough volunteers within your team.
Yeah, it's not even, so I work heavily with partners. So a lot of the work that I do is working with partners, and partners
like what? Other charities?
Other charities, other voluntary sectors, church groups, and people of goodwill who want to come in and they want to help. But because really beautiful hearted people out there, and people that's just willing to give their time and just want to do good and want to help, and they actually see the good in asylum seekers and refugees and wanting to help them as well. So a lot of good people and good willing people out there trying to do what they can, and trying to give back as much as they can. But again, they only have a certain amount of time they can give.
Resources, capacity. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. What are the stats telling us? Is it a 50-50 split? Is there a lot of people who are coming with qualifications, ready to look for jobs, or is there more who've got language barriers? What kind of things are you finding you're having to deal with as priority? Or
so a lot of people do come with qualifications, not everyone, but a lot of people do come with qualifications. A lot of people can speak English, not all of them, but a lot of them are bilingual, so they'll be able to speak Arabic, French, because of the countries that they've traveled through and the languages that they've picked up on their travels. I managed to, for example, get bus passes for them at one stage, and I had given it to some clients, and honestly, they were sending me messages where they had travelled far from where they were staying to go into the city centre and clean up the streets and pick up litter. So they want to give back. I had clients go out to feed the homeless. And I think if I had a free bus travel, I would want to see like the whole of the area.
Yeah, kind of live life, especially if you're an 18, 19-year-old and you got a free bus pass. Yeah, I'm hitting the town.
Yeah, go and see what I can do. But no, they were there. They wanted to give back. They want to help. A lot of them, when you go in and you can't talk to another client, someone else will step in and become an interpreter for you and will help to communicate with people and try and help people, and then they will try and help each other to navigate the system as well.
Do you think sometimes they're doing that then because they feel the need to prove themselves?
No,
or show their worth, or is it just to get a bit of experience? I'm just trying to get into the mindset of they're already struggling. They've come with all these barriers now. Well, no, they're being faced with all the barriers. They've got the stigma. They've got people stereotyping. There's the language issues. And then for them to go out, you got a bus pass now, and you're going back and giving back to society.
they're human. They're like every other human being that's out there. And it could happen to me, it could happen to you, it could happen to anyone today. You can't say, okay, that we're safe. You can't even say that you're safe in this country. At the moment, if you look on certain websites, the UK government have listed out that we should have a pack ready, we should have emergency pack ready. They're doing these emergency tests with our phones. So it just goes to show that, don't forget, a lot of these people have left because of war, because of what's happening in their country. But before they had beautiful homes. They've had, some of them, when they describe their homes, they've got marble floors, big massive chandeliers. They're lawyers, they're doctors, they're nurses, accountants, engineers. So they've all come with proper professional backgrounds, but because of something that's terrible that's happened in their country, they've had no choice but to flee and had to leave home. But before that, they were giving back to their society, they were giving back to the community, they were doing good things. And also because a lot of them have, whether they're Christian, Muslim, Jewish, they come from religion. What does religion teach you?
Right, yeah. Let's talk about women's experience, because that often gets overlooked, right? And sometimes they could be carrying the heaviest burdens. They sometimes will come by themselves, could be really young, maybe come with the children. From your experience in supporting the families, what would you say some of the challenges have been when they arrive in the UK? Sort of kind of immediate factors that come to your mind.
Culture, trauma, even things like, don't forget, they come in the clothes that they're in. So, and then they still haven't lost their identity. They haven't lost who they are. But when we're trying to get clothing donations and we give it to them, sometimes people expect them just to take what clothes are given, and that they should be grateful for the clothes that they're given. But at the same time,
okay, but that wouldn't normally be their dress code.
Yeah, so if someone gave, so if say there was a lady who's just arrived, she's got no clothing, and someone was to say, oh, I've got a bag of clothes, here you go. And then if that lady turned around and said, I'm really sorry, but I don't feel that these clothes would be suitable. Sometimes people can get offended that they didn't accept those clothes because they've gone and sourced them and stuff like that.
Someone would argue, well, be grateful.
Yeah.
We've given you some free clothes.
Yeah. But then you have to think about, your clothing is your identity, and you don't want to lose a part of who you are. So just say that someone is of a particular religion and they dress in a certain cultural way. They're not going to start wearing Western clothes, maybe, because it just doesn't feel like it's culturally sensitive to how they dress. They still want to keep their identity. They still want to keep their religion. And sometimes they feel like they have to lose that. So that can be a big barrier. Recently, we did a project where we someone to come in and talk about cancer and cancer awareness, and then part of that day, we also did a underwear fitting for the ladies. We found out that 9 in 10 of the women didn't know their size, and it was a very emotional day. One woman, she had 3 children. She's never owned a bra in her life, and she broke down and she started crying when we gave her a bra, and she couldn't believe that she had one that fitted her. And then also as well, we found out that in her country, that if you own a bra and you have a bra, you're less likely to get raped, because it means that you are looked after by a husband, a brother, or a father. But if you don't own a bra, you're more likely to be raped.
That's emotional just thinking of that.
It's really,
yeah, because that's so personal, isn't it, for a female? And not just that, the kind of message that's giving other men.
Some of the stuff that the women have been through, it's unbelievable. And a lot of people turn around and say, well, why do single men come here on their own? And then when they get refugee status, they bring their wives over. But when you work in the field, you kind of understand more why. Because I went on training about a year ago, and one of the trainers turned around and said to me, or said to everyone, that you're not a refugee or an asylum seeker unless you've been sexually assaulted in some way or another. So if you step back a minute and you think about that, and you think about it, that could be someone physically touching you or whatever. So why would you bring your wife and children and put them through that? If you could safeguard them, then you could understand why the men would come by themselves. And not that the men have an easy ride.
I was going to say, because surely when it comes to abuse, it wouldn't just be the females, but I think it's not talked about when it comes to the guys.
It's not, it really isn't. Recently I had one client who I spoke to, and they had cut out his liver without his consent.
What? And then what? Sold it?
Yeah, whatever they do, as the smugglers and whatever they do with that. And that was the type of abuse that he had faced. I had another client who was only 18, bless him, and he said that the room was full and there was loads of men, and they grabbed this woman and everybody just covered themselves, put a blanket over them, and no one was budging, no one was doing, and he couldn't quite understand why no one was saying anything. So they was dragging this woman, so obviously they knew that they were going to attack this woman and sexually abuse her. So
were they covering their faces and heads not to hear the sound, or what was going to happen?
Yeah, so that they didn't, so it wasn't, so that they wouldn't get attacked, I guess. So he stood up and he said, stop what you're doing to this woman. So he tried to safeguard this woman from this attack from happening. And the smugglers, they didn't care that he was a male. So and they said, okay, leave her. And then they took him and sexually abused him. It's hard.
It's really hard, I suppose, if people are coming to you and sharing these kind of stories.
I'm very lucky in some respect that I don't always get to hear the stories, and I try to keep myself away from that as much as possible. But when you've built up a relationship with them, you do hear certain stories, and also when I'm asked to do other tasks, then I get to hear the stories. But most of my stuff is quite fun, because I get to like take them out and say, come on, let's go do some cricket, or let's go do the football. So get them out, get them, they have a lot of night traumas because of the fact that in the night they're on their own and things. So a lot of it is repeated, and they have a lot of nightmares and stuff like that because they're reliving the experience that they have been through. But I'm quite fortunate in that I can take them away and give them a break from that and say, come on, let's go out, let's go play football, let's go do cricket, let's go and do something.
But do you
a bit
also
more
at the same
exciting.
time, as part of the service, then offer them the counselling?
So
is there a level of counselling for
well, there is certain services that are out there. Directly the company that I work for don't actually provide counselling. However, we do refer to other organisations. So we would refer them if they did say that they needed counselling to certain counselling services. But as we all know, there's a massive waiting list for these services, and then trying to get services that there is the Bolt helpline, which is available. Well, it was available. It isn't now closed down because of funding, but they had translators available on there that could really help and support with trauma.
Because surely, I'm just trying to think, if you're offering all the other levels of support, trying to get them to adjust to society, to life, understand systems here in the UK, getting on a bus, filling in forms, and which is helping them to move on and build on their skills. But if they've got all those traumas, all that, having to relive all of that, that must be really difficult, right?
It is. It's really, really difficult. And what I find is, unfortunately, when I'm sort of like going in to do certain things with clients, the ones that I manage to get hold of are probably the ones that don't have as much trauma, and the ones that really have trauma are a lot harder to reach, to actually support, to actually get them to come to you and say, I need help, or I want to do something. So they'll just lock themselves in their rooms and be isolated, and trying to get them to come out and engage with you or do something. It takes a lot, and it's about building trust with them as well, and you have to build that trust up.
And maybe some of them wouldn't even think there is that level of support available. Maybe for them, they're thinking, well, coming to the country, I should feel grateful. I need to get myself a job. I need to learn the language. that's probably right at the back of their minds to
For-
address some of those other issues, but really they could come to the forefront at any point in their life.
But for everybody, that support isn't available. So we have to remember that in the locality that we're in, there is a lot of support available. But if you're in a more remote, isolated town, then there's not going to be any support available for you. And getting that support is even more difficult. And you do feel more isolated.
In your experience, what kind of support makes the biggest difference for some of these women and children?
I think that healthcare support is a massive thing. Health, as we know, in certain countries, healthcare isn't of the best, so they definitely need healthcare support. For kids, I think we need more trauma support for them because they've traveled through and had very difficult journeys. And if it was our kids, I would want to give them as much support as possible, and also just helping them to be part of the community and engaging within the community. I think that is really, really important. And just trying to get to know them as individuals. Even something small, like if we had a kitchen and said, come along, cook with us, talk with us, let's share our recipes. That would just make them feel like they're part of the community, that they have a little bit of independence because they're cooking for themselves. That kind of thing would really help them. Small things like that.
So how do you see resilience showing up in women that you work with, the change? So all the support services that they get, what are you seeing from the women and young girls that, who come through the system, everything that they experience and they go on this journey, they've had that support from you. What positives are you seeing?
First of all, they are amazing women to actually come here and get through that journey and be here in the first place. That has taken a lot of resilience just to get to that point, just to even be here. That is amazing that they've been able to do all that and come here and still be in one piece, and then still come back and contribute. So I've got people that I know who have gone through that journey, who have gone through that trauma, but then they've managed to get refugee status.
Yeah.
And then they've managed to contribute back. So they've been able to work and volunteer and get high professional jobs, become managers, become CEOs of companies, and give them back in tax, in national insurance, who have volunteered and have become great community leaders.
How amazing. So I guess that goes back to the general public perception of the stereotypes that we get, where people seem to think they're taking over our jobs, they're draining the NHS system. But surely, if you think about the journey that they've been on, coming into the country, the traumas they've faced, the abuse, it's not been easy.
No, it's far from being easy for them, and yet they still want to come to the UK. They want to give back to the community, and they're not going anywhere. We have to think about, we have seen that a lot of people that have been brought up in the UK who have become doctors and have become nurses, and a lot of those people have left the UK. They've set up homes in countries like Spain, in Qatar, in Dubai, because they want better lives for themselves. Not everybody that's born and bred who are UK citizens that want to stay in the UK, and they have themselves have left the UK to become and have better lives outside. So why are we not welcoming people? Everybody migrates.
How can we, as individuals, as communities, how can we support people? What can we do to help with the change?
I think to talk to them, listen to them, don't judge. I think the main thing is do not judge, and do not think that you know what these people are like. They are human beings, they're an individual. Each person is an individual.
And I think it's so important about raising that awareness and understanding and learning about their stories. I think that's what we're lacking.
Yes.
Because we're so quick to judge. We're just generally, as human beings, we're judging all the time.
It's just unfortunate. I think it's the world that we're in.
How's this work that you're doing changed you as a person? Like, what do you get from it?
A good night's sleep. That's what I get from it. I couldn't go to bed. My conscience wouldn't allow me to go to bed to know that someone out there hasn't got a pair of shoes, or is suffering. And when I hear the stories and someone has come and they've got this problem, and if I can try and help someone in some way, then it allows me to have a good night's.
You know, you've made a difference to somebody's life, right?
Yeah.
Because other people who would hear stories like that would have nightmares and wouldn't be able to go to sleep.
How I see it is, if I'm able to make a positive change in someone's life and I don't leave that person, and I'm able to do something as small as give them a nail clipper, and how much thank yous I get from that and how much appreciation it is, and it's just something like a nail clipper, and I can change someone's life, and then
Don't give a nail clipper example, give something else.
Okay.
I don't know why.
Okay. Okay. If I can change someone's life and I can make a positive impact, then I'm hoping that that person will then go on and make a positive impact onto someone else's life. And that if everybody does make positive impacts, and it's like that ripple effect,
of course, yeah,
then the world become a better place. And if you can't donate clothes that you've worn, then go out, buy some clothes. It doesn't have to be really expensive clothes, but if you've got a little bit of money, then go out and buy some clothes that then we can then give out, because men clothing is really, really difficult. And underwear.
So I was going to say, so apart from clothes, what other support can people offer?
Mentoring. I think mentoring, befriending, these are also great supports that people can offer. It can just be an individual talent.
Yeah, there are people who are creative. There are people who've got an expertise in something. Share that knowledge.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm looking for...
or just be a listening ear even.
Just take time, have a cup of coffee with them. That's what I'm saying, by befriending or mentoring someone and just sitting with them, having a coffee. Sometimes that's all it takes, is a cup of tea and a biscuit.
A conversation.
Yes, child.
So what about people who are from different faiths, like say if they're from a Muslim faith or Sikh faith, Indian, are there other charities that support, because it'd be their own religious festivals, right, that they follow?
Yes. So again, we are trying to make sure that, or I try to make sure. So if I know that it's Eid, we try to do a Eid appeal. But for Christmas, we do it for adults, children,
the whole family.
But when it comes to Eid, we just do for the children, because unfortunately we don't get as many donations in during the Eid season or for Easter as we would for Christmas.
Do you think that's because then people aren't aware of the services and where they are and how to support? If one of your service users was here today, what message do you think they'd want to give to the viewers and listeners?
So it was Refugee Week not so long ago, and I had a client and he gave such a beautiful speech, and all he did was say thank you to the community, thank you to all the voluntary sectors, thank you to the Home Office, thank you to the UK government for giving us safe passage and allowing us to come into this country.
Just a big fat thank you.
It was, yeah, they were just so grateful and thank you. But I think, like I always say, why would someone, I mean, I've got clients who have come, they've done the boat ride, they've lost children, they've lost a brother, they've lost their family members. So why would you put your family at risk, put people that you love's lives at risk, unless it would have to be essential. It would have
to be really dire, wouldn't it, for you to do that?
You'd have to be in a dire situation.
Yeah.
I couldn't comprehend why you would put yourself at such a risk unless you were in such a bad situation of where you originally come from. And also we have to remember that we are not the biggest country that are taking in a lot of asylum seekers or refugees. If you look at the statistics, a lot of people will actually stay in the neighboring
country.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's a lot more countries out there that take on more percentage than the UK.
Okay. So if there are people out there who want to support, give donations, whether it's time, money, expertise, resources, goods for your shoebox appeal, tell us about some of the charity partners that you work with. Who are they?
So I would say local councils, they have migration teams that you can get in touch with in order to work with those. For Birmingham, work with St. Chad's Sanctuary, which is absolutely amazing, especially if you've got loads of clothes that you wish to drop off to. You've got the refugee migrant centres in Birmingham, Coventry, out in the community. So they are really, really great organisations. In Birmingham, we work with Birch Network, we work with Restore, especially if you want to give out your time. So they're always looking for befriending people that want to come on board and do befriending.
Even as a nation, right now we're going through turbulent times. What would your message be to everyone who's listening?
Ooh, vote me as your Prime Minister. I'm no politician and I don't know the right answer, and I do feel sorry for whoever is in Parliament.
It's a big ask, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And I think it's a massive responsibility, and you're never going to make everybody happy. No matter which way you go or what way you decide, there's always going to be people who are not happy with the decisions that you make. But if I was actually in the seat at the moment, I think that I would really look at... Britain used to be a really, really good country in terms of farming, in terms of jobs, in terms of warehousing. We had the canals and we did a lot of business, we did a lot of trading. And I don't see why as Britain we still can't do that, why we can't have factories, why we can't create jobs. So I think as Prime Minister or as a politician, you need to look at what are we doing as a country in order to create jobs, not just for... We're not talking about asylum seekers, refugees here. I'm talking about the normal everyday citizen. What are we actually doing to create revenue and jobs in this country? And then also as well, when asylum seekers are coming in, there's going to be certain talents and certain fields where we are lacking. There's going to be always going to be a shortage. So why not, when they're coming in, saying, well, what is your job skill set? And we currently have vacancies here and here and here. Would you like us to train you in these fields? And put training programs, not even just for asylum seekers and refugees, but for UK citizens as well. Put the right training in place to train people to fill in these job sets, and let them pay tax, let them pay national insurance, let them give back, because if they're giving back, then it's not a burden on the taxpayers.
Exactly. Yeah.
And all these issues that we're having currently, probably we wouldn't have them.
No. And we're going to leave it on that note.
Don't forget to vote for Samira for Prime Minister.
And that's a wrap on today's conversation. We've learned that asylum isn't about numbers or borders. It's about people, survival and resilience. If you're listening and you've ever wondered, what would I do if I had to leave everything behind in 24 hours? Well, maybe now you've got your answer. A huge thank you to our guest for sharing her experience and for you in tuning in. Don't just stop here. Keep the conversation going. Share this episode. Challenge the myths when you hear them. And remember, behind every label like refugee or asylum seeker, there's a story worth listening to. Thank you for joining us. And here's to amplifying women's voices, not just today, but every day. Until next time, stay curious, stay human, and we'll catch you on the next episode.